it's a two-part webinar, so they're at the same time. So today is the getting started part, and then tomorrow is a little bit of an extension of that. Okay, but I first did these webinars, I think, on the 17th of March and the 24th of March. I get very confused. So Mariangela, I will just answer that certificate question one more time, in that they are sent out. We don't know when. You have to remember that neither Sinead or I work for OUP directly, although a lot of you probably think we do because you see us all the time at the moment. And there are so many people there are so many webinars going on around the world, because nobody can have a face-to-face event, that the time frame is a bit messed up. Okay, so we can't guarantee when you will get them, but you will get them at some point. Okay. Hello, Magda. I just left the Czech webinar to come here. Right, shall we get started then? All right, so in this webinar, as I said, I'm going to look at the questions we need to ask ourselves about getting started in online, live online. So we're going to look at what we need, what kind of advice I can give you, and those kind of things. All right, but I'm going to start, as I always do when I do a webinar, with roll call. So in the chat box, please, which country are you joining us from? So which country are you joining us from? Zoom. There are 1,100 people, and you can see how fast the chat box goes when you have 1,000 people in the room. Can anybody see any of those countries? All I can see is like Ukraine. Any guesses? The UK. There's a good. Isn't it a lovely day in the UK? Okay, are you ready? I'm going to ask you to stop typing in 3, 2, 1. It is a sunny day in England. So if you could just put your stop typing for that question. Otherwise, we keep going in. There you go. Now this room is a bit odd. This is an Adobe room, obviously. So what it does, it only allows so many of you to type at once. So when I say stop, we still get answers because the queue of people was waiting. Okay, brilliant. Croatia. I haven't been to Croatia for a couple of years. Uzbekistan, Mexico. Perfect. And now we're slowing down. Thank you. Okay, so that was my first task. Let's give you another task. Can you finish this sentence, please? Okay, can you finish this sentence, please? Okay, nervous, excited, Ecuador. No, that must be the last question. Excited, empowered, brilliant. I'm so pleased to see all these excited, discombobulated. That is one of my favorite words, I think. Brilliant. Level up as a teacher. That's a good answer. You know, awkward. Oh, that's a shame. Awkward's an interesting answer. Like a circus trainer. Oh, I wish I could give you a mic and explore that further. Sleepy, interesting. Oh, could never imagine sleeping on camera. That'd be so embarrassing. Unexpected, well, very unexpected, I would have thought, Irena. Invigorated, nice answer, Kristen. Perfect. Like an entertainer. A fool. Oh, that's a shame. Unprepared. Yeah. I can imagine, and I do appreciate that you know, it's amazing. I don't think any of us imagined when we started this year that we would be one day teaching in a physical classroom and the next day teaching in some remote classroom. I always find it slightly amusing because obviously for me this is normal. I teach more online than I do physically, so for me, I've been doing this for about 10 years, so I'm always interested to see what people say when they do this. Okay, so we've had 2 tasks. I wanted to begin with a couple of tasks so we can get to know what we're doing. So this task here's a map that we just did, and I asked you for the countries you were in. With 1,200 of you, I couldn't give you a pen, okay? But if you were my class, so if you were my class of 12, 20 students, I would have let you actually draw on this map, and I would have asked you to draw where you were, okay? So obviously one of the tools we have in an online classroom is a whiteboard, is images, the ability to use there. And then over here, we've got the chat box. And I gave you a gap fill exercise, didn't I? I mean, essentially, this is a gap fill exercise. Finish the sentence. So here we're taking a typical classroom activity, courseback activity, and I asked you to do it in the chat box rather than in a course book. So we started with two fairly typical, I hope, language teaching activities that we've just done online. So let's do a third activity. So everybody pause if you're typing for a second so we don't confuse our answers. Was it not on the map, Fiona? That's terrible. You know what I did, and I do apologise. What I did was I went to clip art maps and found a map that I could use that was obviously not copyright. So I'm going to put my hand up and say I'm sorry, but it wasn't actually me. Anna, there is no pen because I couldn't give you a pen because there's too many of you. All right, here's the third exercise. Are you ready? Here is a picture from my mobile phone. Okay, here's a picture from my mobile phone. It is a picture that I took last summer, in fact. And what I've done is I've used a filter to make it black. Okay, what can you see on the thing? So we've got a frying pan, we've got barbecue, got some eggs. A lot of people think it's barbecue. Pancake, pizza, lollipop. All right. That way, a frying pan with something, right? A flour. The solar system. That is a really creative answer. It's really wrong, but it's a very creative. Yes, you probably answered. You probably did come to this webinar before. Yes, I saw somebody with the answer. Okay. Bye, Brian. Okay, so people said it's not vegan. All right, that's a little bit harsh. You don't know. You can't see the picture. Yes, it is a picture from my camping holiday last year. A frog in a pan. How creative. Before I show you the answer, just remember that we're doing an ELT activity. So again, typical ELT activity. Here's a picture, and this time I'm using the chat board to elicit what people think it is. I've asked you simply to put in vocabulary here, but I could have asked you to put in questions that you could have asked me, or put you on mic to get questions to ask me. Would you like to see what the picture was? Here you go. There you go. There's the picture. It is pizza. Okay, so it's my fire pit, and I'm making a on fire pit pizza. On fire pit pizza, that's a good one, is it? Jose, you don't believe me? So that's basically it's a flatbread, and on it I put some prosciutto and some olives and some mozzarella, and the heat of the pan will melt it all. Yes, I didn't say it was an Italian pizza. Maria, good question. Yes, it was. Terrible. Elena, my son loved it. Magdalena, I basically just gave you the recipe. It is a fabulous campfire lunch if you are camping. I love camping, so we go camp. I can see it looks like some in Italia, but it's not. Yeah, but there you go. Where were they? Good question as well. I was in a campsite on the south coast in Weymouth in the UK. An English pizza. Now I'm going to get criticised by the Italians. It was a lunch, Constantia. Yes, Francesca. How did I hide the image, Simona? That is very easy to do. There are three ways you could do it. So if I use it into a PowerPoint slide, I can just edit the image with a little bit of a black square over it. But actually, what I did is on most mobile phones, you get the ability to edit a photo. So I just edited it and I turned what's called the saturation down. I just turned the color down with it. Most people use their filters to make their pictures look better, but it's quite interesting if you use your filters to make the pictures look worse, because there's a lot more you can do with them. So that's how I did it. But it wasn't necessary the filter. I mean, I could have also just shown you a little part of the image on the slide, rather than take out the color all along, and you could have done it that way. Okay, I want you to, Nadia. Last question about the pizza. I could do, but I was camping. No, I don't take an oven camping. This is a campfire. All right. But so what I've shown you, I think I wanted to begin with three activities that aren't dissimilar from what we would do in a in a physical classroom. I can't believe the grief I'm getting for having for my pizza. It's just like, oh dear me. So um, I know, and I like tease. I like being teased. So, what I wanted to show you, more importantly, as I said, were the three activities that you would have to agree we would do similar activities in our physical classrooms. We would be able to, we can use maps, we can use images, we can use students throwing it. Yeah, that's why. Alea, I think it is. I chose pizza deliberately because I knew some of you will know the pizza incident from L Talk. Okay, so let's let's get into synchronous and asynchronous. Okay, here's two words for you: synchronous and asynchronous. Okay, so if you are teaching online or you're reading about teaching online, you will always hear these two words. Okay, so one is synchronous, one is asynchronous. The question is then, which are we doing now? Okay, which are we doing now? Yeah, perfect. All right. So this is, as you all quite rightly say, synchronous. We're locked into the same time, the same place, the same classroom. Okay. So this is synchronous teaching, sometimes called live online teaching, sometimes called video conferencing. All this idea of us being locked together to be synchronous. Fabulous. Okay, stop the answers. All right. So synchronous is here and now, and of course asynchronous is when we're all probably in the same place, but we're in the same place at different times. So I run a lot of synchronous teacher development courses, for example, and my students would join me over a whole week rather than for 1 hour. And you kind of asynchronous, you probably know quite well simply by using something like social media. If you use Facebook, for example, that, although that does have a synchronous element because you can go Facebook Live, most of what you do on Facebook is asynchronous. You make a status update, and then over hours people respond to that status update. If you're new to that environment in teaching, then your school has probably introduced you to something like Google Classroom or Edmodo, and they are asynchronous tools. Miranda's asking a very interesting question there about Moodle or Edmodo. I think they're too different to compare, Miranda. Edmodo is the easiest one for sure. You wouldn't have to prepare much for that, but they're very different beasts. Okay, so we're talking about synchronous teaching. Yes, Jenny, I would agree. So we're talking about synchronous teaching, and this is how how Pete Chalmer divides them up when he did a talk a few weeks ago on blended learning. Okay, it does, Mariella. That's very right. Google Classroom has a meet in it. Yeah, that's an interesting question, Mariella. So Mariella, I apologize if I mispronounced that. Mariella Vigo says, how many students can participate in synchronous teaching? Well, I mean, it would depend on how big your class is and what you want them to do. Obviously, here I've got 1,264 students, so I can't do a lot of pair work. But I would say, I mean, I did a lesson last week with 40 students in it. So it depends. I think it depends what you want to do. And as I think Laura said, the platform makes an important consideration. Which is good. We'll get to that question then. Are you ready? So, a lot. I think when people are beginning this process of thinking about going live online, the first question that they tend to ask themselves is, what platform should I use? Okay. Now, lots of people are going to go Zoom in the box. I've picked a few here. Do you know what? So there's several here. Do you know what they are? Anybody use them all? Yeah, somebody said what about Teams. I could have put Teams on there. I just wouldn't have fitted on the slide. So you've got lots of synchronized platforms there. So you've got Skype, which most people know. You've got Zoom, which is incredibly popular at the moment. This third one on the top row, the inverted commas, is Google Meet. Used to be called Google Hangouts. Underneath, you've got LearnCube, which is like Zoom but for education. The one next to that is Adobe. So the green 4 or 5 squares is Adobe. This is where we are now. And then there's WizIQ. And I am not suggesting these are the only places at all. Other people have suggested MS Teams, which I use quite a lot. Other people, somebody said Jitsi. I'm never sure how you pronounce it, which is fine. There are many more. There are so many more. Blackboard, as Naveed has just said. So I'm no way advocating the 6 that are on screen. I just randomly picked 6 that I thought people might know. Okay. Alexandra, that's an interesting question. Why is everybody so crazy about Zoom at the moment? I would imagine, if I had to speak personally, I think there are 2 reasons for that. One, they were very clever. Their free license is very useful. You can do a lot on their free license. And secondly, it's very easy to use. Yeah, so Riven, you said Discord. I use Discord as a gamer, actually. So people are saying Discord or WhatsApp. Yep, these are obviously tools that we can use for teaching. I would put them in a separate category to this. Viber is another one that's in there. Okay, I'm not particularly going to go into the ins and outs of every room because that would take us days, and I'm not an expert in all 6 of those. I know 4 of them very well, but I think we will discuss which ones they are. So which ones don't you know? I'll put my arrow on the screen. So Skype, we know Skype. Zoom, this one here, the inverted commas, is Google Meet or Google Hangouts. LearnCube is like Zoom, but it's for education, and it's relatively new. This one here is Adobe, which we're all in now. And this one, WizIQ, is a platform that allows both synchronous and asynchronous with it. So they are, obviously one thing that people say which are free, well, the top 3 are all free. In a sense, that's difficult to say. So Skype is free, obviously. Zoom is free to an extent, and also depending on where your location is. And Google Meets is free as well. Sylvia, as you will see in a moment, there's not one I recommend particularly, okay? Because I don't think it's a question of favorite or expensive or whatever. In fact, I would say the first question that we ask is not what platform should I use. It's actually, what are my students' needs? Yeah, I will talk about Zoom safety later, Liliana. So what are my students' needs? And I think this is the first question. And I don't think we should actually start looking at platforms until we actually know what we're going to teach and how we're going to teach. A very simple thing, for example, if I had a one-to-one student, then Skype would be perfectly acceptable. Yeah, because as one student, we can just hook up and we don't need anything else. Everybody knows that. If I had 2 or 3 students, maybe Skype is still good enough for me. If my school uses Google Classroom as normally uses Google Classroom, then I would surely use Google Meet, because that's there and my students know that platform is there and it should be in there. If I need a breakout room, which is a lot of you are talking about now, then I can't use Skype because Skype doesn't have breakout rooms. Microsoft Teams doesn't have breakout rooms. Yes, Christina, for many of you, it is a school decision. I appreciate that. But what I'm trying to also convey is that we shouldn't put the technology first, as somebody said. The technology we shouldn't forget the students, even in this time, even in this time where we're kind of rushing to get online. I'll get to breakout room in a bit, Valentina. When we're rushing to get online, then we should remember our students first. Okay. All right. So our question should be then what are our students' needs, and then we can start to think of platforms. And yes, there are lots of costs involved and lots of different security things involved. Everybody's now talking about the security issues about Zoom, for example. If we teach kids, that would be very different to teaching adults, but everybody still has data. What do we do? You know, all these things that we need to consider. We also need to consider what we actually want to do with the students online. Yeah, because I mean, Synchronous has great. Like now, Synchronous is great, but I can't give you all individual attention online. Even if you were a class of 30, I couldn't deal with you all particularly well online. We need to go into breakout rooms so that, you know, there are some things which are better done in different ways, you know. So maybe synchronous isn't the way forward. Maybe we also need to think about asynchronous. So we also, when we look at what our students' needs are, we need to consider what we're actually teaching them online. You know, if we're doing a speaking lesson, then maybe we want to have that live online. If we're going to go over reading, maybe a live online. But if we want them to develop their writing skills, then maybe we should actually be looking at asynchronous with it. As Christina has just said. And it's very likely, in fact, that in schools you'll be doing a mixture of both with it. And that, you know, I have to say, I prefer asynchronous. I think a lot more can be done asynchronously to synchronous teaching. But so when we're thinking about the platforms we're using and whether we're going live online and that kind of thing, then we also need to consider what our students' needs are in terms of how we're going to do that delivery. I hope that makes some kind of sense. So leading on from that question, I think we need to consider, so if these are our platforms, then we also need to consider, when we're looking at the needs of our students, what a platform has in it that we can utilize. Yeah. So for example, what does a platform do? So Maya is straight in there. We've got screen share. Okay, so in a platform we can screen share. John, that's a good one. Zoom has a whiteboard, So John, I presume the question is, does it work on all those things? A call channel, we can write, we can communicate. So chat box. Sharing documents, creating quizzes. Yeah. Recording, that's useful or not. Yeah. So what does the room do? Voting, polling, yeah. So lots of things. I had to think, and I wouldn't say my list is exhaustive, but I would say that we're looking, depending on your students, for this kind of thing. Yeah. So I would say this was a typical kind of list of tools that that online platforms bring. I'm just pausing so people can read, and if they've got any questions. Okay, so obviously we need to be on sound and vision. We probably need a chat box. Can we play things? You know, if you've got a listening lesson, how easy is it to play the listening? Can you share files if you've got a worksheet that you want the students to do? Does it have things like emojis? Emojis are very good for instant feedback, for example. Can you? What other tools are available through that? Can you share your screen? Are there the breakout rooms? Are there polls? Is there the ability to record? John, when you say it's realistic to only use smartphones, you mean for your students? Can you put the question a bit longer, and I'll try and answer it? You mean, can the students only use smartphones? Is that what you're saying? So breakout rooms is the question that it is. Come on then, you're all well, most of you now are online experts. Can you tell people what what a breakout room is. Let's see. A lot of people are asking, can you? There we go. That's a really nice answer, Viva. I hope I said that right. Kristen, that's a really good answer. I really need better glasses for the chat box. Aphrodisi, yeah, excellent. Okay, we will look at them a little more tomorrow, but I without dismissing the answers that you gave, because there are some really excellent definitions there. It's a tool within a room that allows you to put your students into a different room. So at the moment, in a different space, sorry. So at the moment, all of you are in my space. So if I wanted to do pair work, we would all hear each other. But if I press a breakout room, and this room does have a breakout room, if I press the breakout room function, it will put you into pairs or small groups, and then they will be able to poll. They'll be able to talk to each other. Okay, I'll show you that a little bit more tomorrow. But that's how you would deal with speaking, for example, if you wanted the students to do typical pair work activities with it. John, yes, I'll come back to that. Breakout rooms, I think it's interesting. Breakout rooms I think are very important for ELT teachers. So you do get them in Zoom and Adobe and those, and LearnCube. No, LearnCube hasn't got them yet, whereas Skype doesn't. Efranisi, does the teacher have the choice of who goes into each room? That depends on how easy you manage the room and the software you're doing it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, doesn't it not, Gabriella? You know what? I haven't used free Zoom for ages. I pay for my Zoom, so it does in that. Are you sure? Have you been in the back and if you log into Zoom in the back end, is it switched off? I'm not sure. I believe you. I just haven't done it for a long time. Polls. Whoever asked what polls were? Let's have a look. Okay, here's a poll. So a poll is somewhere where I could get the students to make a vote. Yeah. So you can see the poll is on the screen now, and you can see all the students are polling with it. So I thought it would have been closer. There you go. So you see that's a poll, and many platforms have a poll in them. Sometimes unnecessary, because you could simply use the chat box. But there you go. That is an example of a poll for those who feel that you need them. Okay. So when we're looking at our platform with it, then we are trying to, I think, consider what we need in that platform, and what we would do in a lesson and how we might need it. That's not to say in your first lessons online you should really be doing all these things, because we're starting. I think our lessons should be quite simple at the start, but there are things that we can do. Gigi, Mentimeter can do polling very well. You're absolutely right. It would require the students to use it would be difficult in the room. This poll I put in the room. So if I added a new poll, so that poll there is in the room. The students are in the room. But something like Mentimeter or even Poll Everywhere would work very well as well, but the students would have to do it in another browser or on their mobile phones. Oh, John, to answer your question of could people do synchronous teaching on a mobile phone? Yes, it would be slightly more limited. You would probably very much be limited to seeing slides, video, audio, but there's no reason why you couldn't do it all on a mobile phone. To be honest, it would just need some careful setting up, and it would limit you to what they could do, because not every phone would be able to do everything, but it would depend on the platform that you were using. Okay, so we choose our platform, we choose our tools, and then I think we tend to, as a teacher, we can make a mistake. And I think the mistake we often make is assuming that our students are digitally competent. Okay? I think we make this big mistake. I know it's not our fault because as teachers we're told all the time that students are digital natives. Yeah, which is a phrase I have to say I completely detest and I think is so wrong as a phrase. Um, Digital natives is an interesting phrase. We're supposed to be. It comes from the work of Prensky. If you don't know the thing, that that people are digital natives, or if you're my age in your 50s, for example, you're a digital immigrant. So we make this mistake as teachers, thinking that we're the ones that don't understand these platforms, but our students do. Our students use technology all the time. And Eleni, sorry, a gaming expert is a good way. I would say, of course, students use technology and they know technology, but realistically, how many of your students would have ever been in an online room before? How many of them will understand it? How many of your students will have done things that are kind of technology for education, not technology for social media, no whatever. And I think all I'm saying is that's a mistake that we can make that leads us into some sort of stress because we think the students are better than us at it, and it's not true. Okay, and I think when we all come to perhaps in video games, yeah, although I would doubt that when they come to me. But so I'm not saying that they don't know technology, but don't make that assumption that they know the technology in the way that you want to use the technology. Yeah. So when they come into the online classroom, they're probably as nervous as you. It's probably new for them, and it's a whole new experience for them as well as you. And they need to be taught how to use these things. Yeah. So it's no good, that when we have them in the classroom, we shouldn't exactly, Mariella. We shouldn't be jumping in with bells and whistles. Mariella hits the nail on the head there. The first lesson should be used to help the students get familiar with the tool. And I completely agree with that. So much so, I would normally give my students a can you do this? Okay. So can you do this? I'm going to put some things that in this room you should be able to do. Okay? You might not know how to do them, but you have the permission to do them. Are you ready? So, can you do these things? All right? One, yes. Minnie, that's brilliant. Just say one, yes. But you've changed the colour of the chat. There we go. We've got some colour there. Brilliant. And change the colour of the chat. Okay. If you paid attention to Sinead and me at the beginning, you would have known most of this. Number 4, by the way, AFK means away from the keyboard. Okay. AFK is gaming technology away from the keyboard. So when you're online gaming, you just put AFK to say that you're away. Okay. Thank you, Maria. Maria just stepped away. By the way, if you step away, you will lose your sound, so be careful. Brilliant. Okay. All right. And bring yourselves towards an end in a moment. You don't have to do it all, but hopefully you get my point. Yeah, there's this that our first lesson, as I think it was Mariella said, we should be teaching the students how to use the platform, and this kind of can-do statement. The Common European Framework is all about can-do statements, but here we're taking a can-do exercise, and we're asking the students to show they can do something. And if they can't, we've got this perfect teaching moment. So if you are in software that uses breakout rooms, you could put them into pairs and groups, and they could teach each other how they can do things, and so on. So we shouldn't. When we meet together, we shouldn't assume people can do things. And likewise, we shouldn't assume that they're going to do it every time. And when I teach, when I have my lessons, then I always take the first few minutes. Most of us begin with a warmer, but I begin with something not crucial to the lesson, because that first few minutes there are always going to be people coming in, learning, getting their audio working, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so we don't just assume that just because the room works one day, it's going to work the same the next day. We do need to bear that in mind when we're setting things up. Okay. You can't actually. It's difficult for you to do number 3, Bernadette, because you can't see the attendee list. All right. So, so in the first 5 minutes, Carla, I would do something. You know, I'd have a picture that I've taken of the day, or I would just chat to the students as we would normally in a classroom. I mean, in my first few minutes of my physical classroom, I would chat to the students normally. I wouldn't start my lesson. AFK is away from the keyboard. Okay, is it better to wear a headset? I'm going to answer that in a very short while. All right. Checking the homework. No, Magdalena, I wouldn't check the homework as my first activity, because some of the students will be connecting late, or they would be, or they might have connection issues, and then they'll come into the classroom trying to find, you know, what happened and trying to catch up. I wouldn't want them to miss them. Karina asking about the news. Yeah, although since the news is constantly one thing, I think it gets a bit boring. Maybe the classroom should become an escape from coronavirus from it. Thank you, Aurora. Somebody asked about netiquette, and I think that would be my second thing that I would do in my first lesson. I would establish what the rules of the classroom are. Again, when we have a physical classroom, we often in the first lesson we set these classroom contracts, or we set the classroom rules. And I think it's important to do that in a classroom. And one of the things here, obviously, there's only my mic is active. But in a classroom, so one of my netiquette rules is in a classroom, your mic is off as a rule until you talk. So in my class, my students have to put their hands up if they want to put their mic on. And that's just for digital hygiene. It makes everybody be able to hear each other and so on. Okay, so you make so just reading some of the comments in the chat box. So have some rules. Now these rules might be established by your school, of course, if the school has helped you move online. But if you're moving online yourself, then you know, set some ground rules at the beginning. This is what you can and can't do. This is what I expect. Okay. One of those rules for me is that there are times when the cameras will be off. There'll be times when the microphones are off. You see what I mean? But rules are important, and I think it's again when we're coming into the classroom, then into this online environment, as much as we can transfer of our practice from the physical into the online, then we will, the more comfortable we will feel with it. Another rule, somebody said more examples of rules. Well, Deborah, one rule that you might want to make up, but one might want to decide about, but you might also, this depends on your setup, is your policy on private messaging, for example. So in this room, you can send each other private messages. Do I want that to happen? So that might be another rule that I would say. But your rules were probably going to be dependent on your platform to a certain extent. Okay. The students grading work online, I'll deal with tomorrow, if that's okay. Are we okay with them so far? So you see, as I said, this session is about those first kind of steps online. So let's move to other things that we need to consider when we're thinking about online. Is how easy is it for students to access? Is it integrated into something? Do I have to share contact info? How do I schedule it? You know, those kind of things. So how do students access it? So for example, Zoom, for example, you send your students a link. Skype, you would need to share contact info. People need to be, I need to know somebody's contact details to hook up with them. Google Meet is integrated into Google Classroom, so it's part of the same thing. Do you see what I mean? So there's some other things that we need to think about in terms of accessibility for students. Magdalena, yeah, Meet is open a meeting, but then you still need to be able to share contact details for it. So again, consider accessibility and how the students are going to access it. And this is something that has come to light very much over the last week with the Zoom bombing incidents that have been going on. Exactly, Katerina. So how are you going to set up your classes? All those kind of things. Yes, Wagner. And one of the things I like about Skype isn't actually the Skype itself, but Skype has I forgot what it is. Oh, Skype has a Meet Now feature, which has more. So in Skype, you can set these user groups, which can be your classes, into a Meet Now. So when you press the button, that user group calls in together. So that could be one class, and that has many more tools with it. Bertha, this is very true. This is probably why asynchronous teaching is better. So my third question. Yeah, exactly, Paola. It's kind of, my brain did take a minute, Wagner, but I was a slight, but I did go anyway. There we go. My fourth question then. My fourth question is this: what animal is this? Okay, so what animal is this? I know you're thinking, what's this got to do with? Elephant. Yeah, there you go. And there's the elephant as a clue. All right. So here's my real question 4. Okay. Here's my real question 4. My real question 4 then is, so we've talked about the platforms and the software. What other things do I need? Okay. So what other things do I need? And here we go. So these are other features or other things we need to think about for our online teaching. And I've made them anagrams, okay? I've made them anagrams. So can you work them out? Yes, somebody, Veronica, well done. Laura, I'm so sorry. Microphone is in there. Number 2 is microphone, yes. So number 1 is a good connection. Number 2 is a microphone. Number 3, Jennifer, you get in there. Number 3 is headphones. And number 4. So number 1. Number 1. Somebody just typed cocoon. So number 4. Number 4, I haven't seen the answer of yet. Number 4 begins with L. The first letter is L. The second letter is O. Location. I think that was... It's got one off the screen too fast. Well done. I saw something like Raquel get it. Who was first? Ralutza? If I pronounce that, I won't pronounce that right. I'm sure Judith got it right. Katerina. Location. Okay, how did I do this exercise? So, I opened an anagram maker. Yeah. So if you Google anagram maker, open a website, take the word that you want. So in this case, headphones or good connection. Drop it into the anagram maker. It gives me the words. And I would do this exactly in a face-to-face classroom, in a physical classroom as well. But this is something normal. I'm sorry, Christina. I thought teachers were intelligent. They'd be able to guess. So here I've just taken my vocabulary activity and I've changed it around, put it onto a PowerPoint slide. Yeah, okay. It took me a little bit longer to prepare the activity, but there's an activity that you can do. However, the point. Oh, does it? Thank you, Anastasia. That's a good. And WordWall's a really nice tool. So, a good connection is obviously important. Okay. Now we used to talk about people online if you are delivering, we're on a cabled network. So at the moment, I've switched my Wi-Fi off and I'm coming to you on cable. Okay, but we should have a good connection. If you if you can cable your computer, put it on a LAN, that's great. But at the moment, especially with Wi-Fi, it's so intermittent. And even if you have a great Wi-Fi connection, it can go up and down throughout with it. So So just consider where your connection is, and you might need to, for example, move closer to the router. I'm in my loft, and my actual router is down 2 floors. So a good connection is very important. You don't want to drop out of it. Number 2 is microphone. You need a good microphone. Think about how many people have talked about the sound here. Okay, everybody's microphones are very different. Bye, Ulrika. With it, consider where your microphone is. I use a professional microphone because I'm a podcaster, which is here. You can't, it's just off camera, but my computer is here. And if we were going to use, if we use my, if I'm going to use my computer mic, obviously that will work as long as I keep talking to my microphone. But if I turn my head this way, my sound disappears. So a good microphone is important. Okay, and actually that possibly answers why the headphone question, because often your headphones will have a microphone in them. Our headphones. So number 3 is headphones, and there was a lot of questions about should you wear headphones. My answer to that is yes, if other people are going to put on their microphones, because it stops feedback. It is actually, Francesca, the sun is absolutely streaming through. I'm in Oxford, but it is a really sunny day. If somebody else, so if Sinead had her microphone on now, then without headphones, it would feed back and it would create a horrible sound. So I would always say, if you are going to wear, if you're gonna have more than one person with a mic on, then headphones are a must. And Mariangela has said it. She uses earphones and a mic. If you've got a smartphone, the headset that came with a smartphone is really really good. Okay, so that has headphones there and a microphone that would probably hang around there. So you don't have to go buy special ones, but they are there for it. And finally, location. I think location is important. Remember, you're going to be on camera, so I'm showing you my personal view at the moment. And as a teacher, we've got to be careful about what we're showing. Yeah. So we've got to be careful what's on the camera when our camera's on. Now, these days, when we're all locked down, I normally work from my loft. You would have seen me in webinars many times from this position. But because schools are closed, my son is downstairs. So I've got to be careful my son doesn't come and run into this room while I'm in a webinar and so on. So, we've got to be careful about what is on camera and what you can see. So, for example, you wouldn't want to have this kind of view coming on camera. That would, your students would think you very, very unprofessional. And I think we've all seen kind of this
scandals
video
all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me.
That's all right, carry on.
My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies.
It just makes me laugh every time. But and you can see why. But we've got to be careful about where we are. So we've got to make sure our location is professional enough, that we're not giving information to our students, and so on and so forth. So we need to consider when we are coming online. Yeah, I mean, I think people do like to see. If I turn my camera off now, there'd be lots of things in the chat box about I can't see you. I think people do need to see each other with it. But certainly, during a class or off the cameras, if the student's doing some work, I'd ask them to switch off the cameras. If I would switch off my camera so they don't think I've stood over them all the time. So I think cameras are one thing, but there is a certain element to it. And of course, cameras do take up the most bandwidth, as I think somebody's just saying there. So having them off with it. Yes, Constantia, they should, which actually leads me to my next point, which is the ensuring safeguarding. Most of us are teaching young learners because it's the schools that have closed. So whether it's young learners or adults, we need to think about safeguarding. Where's the data going? How are we keeping them? How are we being safe with them? How are we ensuring that that you're not left alone in a classroom with a minor and all those kind of things? Do you know what I mean? There is some. I don't have much time left, but I just point out there is some good advice on that website if safeguarding is something that we've got to think about. Okay. Yes, Wagner, that's a good idea. So do think about safeguarding, and this is one of the issues, of course, why people have started questioning whether Zoom is safe or not, and there's a lot of safeguarding issues with that, in the sense that if people, and I have to say, stupidly sharing their personal room numbers out on social media, then people were always going to jump in and spoil them. But we do need to be careful about how, when we generate information, who we give it to, and so on. Okay. So I'm going to finish just with some advice. Tomorrow I'll go into things in much more detail, lesson wise, look at planning lessons and those kind of things. Okay. So today we're setting up tomorrow in a way. So let's finish with some advice. Okay, so as teachers, get comfy with your technology. Okay, go play with it. You can't break it, so go and play with it. And to that end, practice. Okay, practice yourself, practice with each other. Just get on and practice. The more you practice, the more you're comfortable with it. Okay, expect trouble. Things always go wrong. They always do. They really do go wrong. But what can if you are in a position where you think things will go wrong, you're in a better position to deal with it. Somebody's microphone's not working. Somebody's headphones aren't working. And that's why I said at the beginning, don't do something key at the start of the lesson. Give yourself 10 minutes for the students to work everybody to get everybody in it. Try and make eye contact, but as I said, turn your camera off if you can. But the most important thing, be yourself. Those of you who know me personally, I would think you would say that I am very much like this in as a teacher in the physical classroom as I am in the online classroom. And I think the most we can be both, the better we are. Personalizing it, and you can't see everybody, but one of the things I've tried to do, I hope you noticed, when you're typing into the chat box, I tried to call you by name, because that's a bit of personalization. I tried to pick out things that people are talking about, so trying to personalize, acknowledge people's contribution, and therefore encourage them through what they're doing with it. It makes people feel like they're part of a session with it. Okay, finally then, last activity. Here's my dice, and if you were my students, here's my die. So if you're my students, you would have a die ready, because I always use dice in teaching. Are you ready? I'm going to throw a number. All right, here we go. And the number was 3. Okay, so into the chat box, please. Give me some advice on safe ways to greet people. Okay, so in this time in the chat box, please give me some times to say hi, curtsy. Thank you, Fiona. Hello, everyone. Thank you. How you doing? Blow a kiss. Wave ahead. And there you go. Okay, so you see a simple classroom activity still works the same way, exactly on a camera. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I will thank you. I've tried to answer as many questions as possible as we got through it. My time is pretty much up. So tomorrow I will be the same time, same place. I will be talking about your first lessons, and we'll be taking a piece of material, taking some lesson ideas and running with them. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks a million. Okay, so for those of you asking about tomorrow, those of you who haven't registered yet, there's the link. I've just put it into the chat box. I'll put it in again. If you guys could hold off typing in the chat box, people might be able to grab it, yeah? Super. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us, and we do hope that you enjoyed the webinar. Thank you very much, Sean, for those great tips and tricks and ideas and content for people. Sending a follow-up email in the next few weeks. Those of you asking about certificates and recordings, they will come, excuse me, they will come in this email. What will come in this email is a link to the recording, a request for your feedback, and a certificate of attendance. There is a delay on those at the moment, and they are taking up to 3 weeks. So just bear with us and be patient, and you will get them. We will also include a link to where you can find out about future webinars, but very easy for you to keep an eye out. You just Google OUP webinars, and you can have a look at what's coming up. Write it in your diary, register now. I'll give you the link again. And with that, I'll say thanks very much. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe, everybody.